Before the first elf awoke, before men had even been conceived in the thought of the Creator, there was an act of creation so audacious it trespassed upon the authority of God himself. This was not the work of a dark lord, but of a master craftsman driven by an overwhelming love for substance and a desperate impatience to share his knowledge. His act was to forge a new sentient race from the rock and fire of the earth, a goal that makes the forging of the Rings of Power seem a minor act of hubris. This is the story of a secret that lies at the foundation of the world. The story of the Dwarves. To understand this forbidden genesis, one must first understand the forger, Aulë the Smith of the Valar. Among the divine powers who descended into the world to shape it, Aulë was the master of all crafts, the lord of the very substances of which Arda was made, all the gems that lie in the earth, and all the gold that is fair in the hand, all the walls of the mountains and the basins of the sea, these were his domain. His delight was in the act of making, in the tangible, the physical, the triumph of form over chaos. In this, he was most like the great enemy, Melkor. But where Melkor's desire was to possess and dominate the creations of others, twisting them to his own will, Asul sought to create new things for their own sake, to give of his skill, and to see others learn and grow in their own craft. He was a giver, not a tyrant. And yet, this noble spirit harbored a profound impatience. The grand design of the Creator, Eru Ilúvatar, was unfolding at a pace far slower than Aulë's restless heart could bear. Ilúvatar had decreed that the world was being prepared for the coming of his children, the elves and men, who were to be the principal inheritors of Arda. But they were not yet come. For long ages, the world lay silent, beautiful but unawakened, waiting for those who would walk its lands and build its histories. For Aulë, this great waiting was a form of agony. He was filled to bursting with lore, with techniques, with a deep and abiding desire to teach. He yearned for pupils. He longed for beings to whom he could pass on his knowledge of smithcraft, of mining, of the deep and secret arts of the earth. Beings who would love the stone and the metal as he did, who would see the beauty in a perfectly cut gem and the strength in a well-wrought blade. This yearning grew within him, a fire as hot as any in his forges, until it became a thought that was both bold and perilous. If the children of Ilúvatar would not come, perhaps he could fashion his own. Thus began the great transgression. In secret, deep in a hall he had built for himself beneath the mountains of Middle-earth, hidden from the eyes of all the other Valar, Al-Batul began his greatest and most forbidden work. He knew not the true form of the coming children, for that vision was held within the mind of Ilúvatar alone. So he conceived of a form of his own imagining. They would be a race strong and unyielding, tough as the bones of the earth from which he would make them. They would be dwellers in the deep places, miners and masons and smiths without peer. He would make them hardy, to endure the turmoils of a world still rife with the malice of Melkor. He would make them stubborn, in will and in craft. He would make them the Dwarves. How could one of the Valar, who were themselves creations, dare to create life? This was the ultimate act of subcreation, a right reserved for Ilúvatar alone. But did Aulë even know he was crossing a line that should never be crossed? He toiled in his secret hall, his heart a mix of fervent hope and a gnawing seed of doubt. He poured all of his skill, all of his power, and all of his love for his craft into their making. He devised a language for them, a secret tongue known as Khazad-dûm, ancient and complex, as intricate as the patterns on a damascene blade. He forged their bodies from stone, and their beards from the stuff of mountains. And when the 7 fathers were complete, he gathered his own power, the divine essence of his being, and attempted to grant them the final gift, life. But they did not awaken. They did not stir. Ulkil was a master of substance, but not of spirit. He could craft a perfect vessel, but he could not kindle the flame within. He could not create a true, independent soul, the Fee, for that was a power that came from Eru Ilúvatar and from him alone. In his frustration he began to speak to them, commanding them to move, to think. And a strange thing happened. They obeyed. When he thought of a hand raising, a hand raised. When he thought of a leg moving, a leg moved. He could animate them, as a puppeteer animates a marionette. They were extensions of his own will. They had no thoughts of their own, no life independent of his. When he ceased to command them, they fell silent, and still once more, inert stone figures upon his anvil. His great work was a failure. He had not created children. He had created puppets. And in that moment of profound disappointment, a voice spoke in the cavern. It was a voice that was not a sound, but a thought that entered his mind directly. a presence that filled the very stone around him with an awareness that was absolute and ancient. It was the voice of Eru Ilúvatar, the One, the Creator of all. "Why hast thou done this?" the voice asked, filled not with anger but with a deep, cosmic sorrow. "Why dost thou attempt a thing which thou knowest is beyond thy power and thy authority? For thou hast from me as a gift thy own being only, and no more, and therefore the creatures of thy hand and mind can live only by that being, moving when thou thinkest to move them, and if thy thought be elsewhere, standing idle." Aulë was laid bare. His secret was known, his pride was shattered. In utter humility he answered, confessing his folly. He explained that his desire had been born not of a lust for power or a wish to rival his creator, but from an unbearable impatience to see life in the world, to have others to love and to teach. "I desired such things," he said, his voice trembling with regret, "because I was eager for the coming of the children, and I was lonely. And I did not desire lordship, or the mastery of others' wills. I desired things other than I am, to love and to teach them, that they too might perceive the beauty of Ea, which thou hast caused to be." He admitted his error. He acknowledged that his creations were but a mockery of life, unworthy of the world Ilúvatar was preparing. He submitted himself entirely to the judgment of his father and his king. "I will not be a foster father of things that are mockeries," he declared. "As a child to his father, I offer to thee these things, the work of the hands which thou hast made. Do with them what thou wilt. But should I not rather destroy the work of my presumption?" His heart was broken. In his grief, he saw only one path to redemption: to unmake what he had so pridefully made. He raised the mighty hammer high above his head, his divine muscles tensed to deliver a single, cataclysmic blow that would shatter the seven fathers of the dwarves back into the dust and stone from which they had come. But as the hammer began its descent, time itself seemed to hold its breath. And in that frozen moment, the impossible happened. The seven figures on the stone slab cringed. They flinched away from the descending blow. They shielded their faces with their unliving hands, and from their stone throats came a silent, metaphysical scream of terror. Aulë froze, the hammer held high, his divine strength failing him not from weariness, but from sheer, mind-shattering shock. They were afraid. How could they be afraid? Fear is the child of a will to live, a consciousness, a soul. How could his puppets, extensions of his own will, fear the very hammer he commanded? And the voice of Ilúvatar spoke again. But this time, the sorrow was gone, replaced by a tone of gentle acceptance. "Dost thou not see?" the voice filled his mind. "Even in the very moment of their making, I was present. The plea of thy heart, born not of pride but of love, was heard." Ilúvatar continued, "Thy desire is given to thee. I have accepted thy offering, but I shall not undo it, nor shall I mar it. For what you have made, I have now made my own. I have given them the one thing you could not, the flame imperishable. They have souls." Aulë was overcome with a joy so vast it was painful. His children were real. His children would live. He fell to his knees, weeping not with shame, but with a gratitude that shook the very foundations of his forge. But his joy was to be short-lived, for Ilúvatar was not finished. There was a condition, a price for this unexpected miracle. "Nevertheless," the voice of the One declared, "I will not suffer them to come before the firstborn of my design, for I have willed that the elves shall be the first to walk the lands of Arda, and in the ordering of their coming you had no part. Thy children must wait." Wait? After this miracle? After they had been granted true life, they must now be denied it? The irony was cruel. He had been impatient, and his punishment was to be patience itself. Ilúvatar explained his decree. The dwarves, Aulë's children, would be put to sleep. They would be laid to rest deep within the mountains, hidden from the world, their newfound life suspended in a timeless slumber. They were not to awaken until after the elves had come and walked the starlit lands of Middle-earth. "They shall sleep now in the darkness under stone," Ilúvatar commanded, "and shall not come forth until the firstborn have awakened. And often shall strife kindle between thy children and mine, the children of my adoption and the children of my choice." With a heavy heart, Aulë understood and obeyed. He had been granted a reprieve beyond all hope, and he would not question the will of his Creator. He looked at his 7 sons, their brief moment of awareness already fading as the divine sleep took hold. He laid them down, arranging their limbs, folding their hands upon their chests. He spoke to them one last time in their own secret language, Khazad-dûm,
promising them that he would watch over them, that he would be waiting,
that their father would be there when they awoke. But to Durin, the eldest and tallest, Ilúvatar gave a special fate. He would not be laid to rest with his brethren. Atil was commanded to take him far away, to a lonely peak in the north of the Misty Mountains. There, in a deep cave beneath Mount Gundabad, Durin was laid to sleep alone. For Ilúvatar decreed that he would awaken first, alone, and wander the world for a time, before finding the place where he would found the greatest of all dwarf mansions, Khazad-dûm. He would be Durin the Deathless, living so long that he would be reincarnated among his people 6 times, a living legend, and a perpetual link to their divine creation. But let us pause here and ask a deeper question. Why? Why would Ilúvatar, the all-knowing, allow this? Why would he sanction this act of subcreation, only to put it on hold? Was it merely pity for Aulë, or was there a far greater design at play, a hidden move in the cosmic game against the ultimate evil? Consider the nature of the dwarves. Aulë made them to be strong, stubborn, unyielding, and resistant to domination. He made them to endure hardship, to love the substance of the world, the stone, the metal, the gems, and to be masters of craft. Now think of Melkor. His entire purpose was to dominate the wills of others, and to mar the physical substance of Arda, pouring his own malice into its very foundations. Isn't it possible that Ilúvatar saw Aulë's creation not as a mistake, but as an opportunity? A necessary countermove. The elves, the firstborn, were children of starlight and spirit. They were vulnerable to the deceptions and spiritual corruption of Melkor. But the dwarves were different. They were made of the very stuff of the world Melkor sought to control. They could not be turned into wraiths. Their minds were secretive and difficult to master. Their very stubbornness, which would so often cause friction with elves and men, was their greatest armor against the Dark Lord. Ilúvatar, in his infinite wisdom, may have looked upon Aulë's impatient work and seen not a folly, but the perfect antibodies for a world sick with the poison of Melkor, a race of beings tough enough to delve into the marred earth and reclaim its treasures, to withstand the sieges of evil, and to hold the line when all others might fall. The dwarves were not an accident. They were a contingency plan. But this cosmic secret had immediate consequences. News of Aulë's work did not stay hidden forever. He confessed his deeds to his spouse, Yavanna, the giver of fruits, and she was not pleased. "You have created a race that will love the works of their own hands, not the works of mine," she said. "They will delve in the earth, and will not care for the things that grow and live upon the earth. They will fell my trees, and scar my lands for their forges." Aulë tried to reassure her, explaining that his children would still need wood for their fires and their works. But Yavanna was not comforted. She feared for her creations, the Olvar and the Kelvar, the plants and animals of Middle-earth. Who would protect them from the axes of the dwarves and the dominion of the other children of Ilúvatar to come? In her distress, she went to Manwë, the king of the Valar, and sought his counsel. And through Manwë, her plea reached Ilúvatar himself. It was in that moment that a new thought was placed into the music of the Ainur, a thought to protect the green and growing things. As a counterbalance to the children of stone, Ilúvatar would bring forth spirits from the earth to walk among the trees and protect them. They would be the shepherds of the forest. The Ents. Thus, from Aulë, is one act of impatience. 2 new races were conceived to walk in Middle-earth. The dwarves, born of his hammer and Ilúvatar's grace, and the Ents, born of Yavanna's love and Ilúvatar's design. The cosmic balance was maintained, and so the stage was set. The world was shaped, the lamps were destroyed, the trees of light were grown in Valinor, and Melkor was chained. For long ages the world lay in a quiet twilight, and deep under the mountains of Middle-earth, the 7 fathers of the dwarves slept on, their stone hearts dreaming of the ringing of hammers and the glow of the forge, waiting for the coming of the firstborn, waiting for their own long-delayed dawn. That dawn would be long in coming. For uncounted ages, the world lay in a state of expectant stillness. The Valar dwelt in the light of the 2 trees in their blessed realm, while Middle-earth lay under the sole dominion of the stars. It was a world of deep shadows and silver light, of silent forests and dreaming mountains, a stage perfectly set, waiting for its principal actors to arrive. And then, it happened, not with the crash of a hammer or the splitting of stone, but with a silence more profound than any sound. By the still, star-reflecting waters of Cuiviénen, the firstborn awoke. The elves, the elder children of Ilúvatar, opened their eyes not to the sun or moon, but to the pristine, unwinking light of the firmament.
This was the moment, the signal for which all of creation had been waiting.
As the first elven voices rose in song, a pulse of awakening spread through the very substance of Arda. Deep in the lonely dark of Mount Gundabad, the eyes of Durin the Deathless snapped open. In the ancient forests of the south, bark shifted and wood groaned as the first of the Ents stirred from their long slumber. The children of starlight, the children of stone, and the shepherds of the trees, all three were now awake.
3 distinct threads, born of love, impatience, and providence, were ready to be woven into the grand and often tragic tapestry of the First Age.
The foundational tales have been told. The stage is set, but the true chronicles are only just beginning. To witness the great march of the elves, the rise of the dwarven kingdoms, the wars against the great enemy, and the forging of the legendary Silmarils, to see the full glory and sorrow of the elder days unfold, you must join our fellowship. The story of ages is waiting to be told.
Subscribe to the _Silmarillion_Chronicles, and do not miss a single chapter of the greatest story ever told.